Awesome. So I'm going to kick off just kind of with a little bit of context about me as moderator, and then ask everyone to introduce themselves, who they work for, and what their role is. So as Jeff mentioned, Ad Media purchased 3 companies this year, and Public Good was one of them. So I'm Melissa Anderson. I'm president and co-founder of Public Good. We're an AI company that builds brand love and loyalty through meeting people in moments of motivation for the world's most loved brands like Barbie and L'Oreal and Unilever's Liquid IV. As part of our expansion and being invested in with Ad Media and Ad.com, we were excited to expand and launch a new division called Search.com, which is a Gen AI chat platform that also meets people in moments of motivation when they're looking for products and recommendations. So with that, that is a little bit of a nod to why the panel this morning is around purpose-bred marketing and AI. So with that, I want to pass it to Kelly to introduce yourself. Thank you so much for coming, Kelly. I'm so excited that you're here.
Thank you. Well, it's nice to meet you all, but I'm Kelly Mahoney, and I'm the Chief Marketing Officer at Ulta Beauty. And I've been with Ulta Beauty for about 10 years, so I'm no stranger to Ulta Beauty. I'm happy to talk about the purpose all day long. I stepped into the Chief Marketing Officer role about 7 months ago, so relatively new to the role, alongside Keisha Steelman, who's our newly appointed Chief Executive Officer. It's a really exciting time to be at Ulta Beauty because we are carving out that next chapter of growth, and it's a very different way of growing than we've grown over the last 35 years, a lot of which has to do with the ability to leverage data and carve out personalized experiences and differentiate in a different way other than through our footprint and our real estate strategy. So it's a really important time for me. It's an important time for this company. I'm excited to be here today. I hope you guys can learn a lot from this event. Thanks for having me.
Thanks so much, Kelly.
Yeah.
Good morning. I'm Annie Castellano. I lead brand and creative and marketing
for
one of the segments at Edward Jones, financial planning, financial services company. Been there for almost 4 years. We're based in St. Louis. Anybody? I know there's one person in here from St. Louis. I already met him. I already talked to him. Found the one. There he is. St. Louis is in the Midwest. I don't know if you guys have heard of it. Happy to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Cool. Good morning, everybody. My name is Matt Kerbel. I lead brand strategy globally for a company called Turo. For anybody who doesn't know what Turo is, it is basically like Airbnb, but for cars. So we have an incredible community of hundreds of thousands of hosts that make their over 350,000 cars available for rent globally across 5 countries. Just to be honest, if you're masochistic, you can continue to rent from traditional car rental companies, but I strongly implore you to give Turo a try. It's the best way to rent a car. I've been there for about 3 years, and our goal is to just completely transform the category in the way that other peer-to-peer marketplaces have. You know, you Uber, you don't taxi, you Airbnb, right? Soon you will very, very clearly say that you Turo cars. So very excited to be here, excited to talk about this stuff as well.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So when I was asked to moderate a panel, I thought really about what's worth talking about sort of in this moment. What is happening in this moment that is a compelling conversation? And I couldn't choose between 2 things. There's 2 things that just jump out at me. One is around purpose and values and how we talk about them. It's a different time than it was this time last year. Things have shifted since the election. The other is AI. So things are changing and evolving at a pace we've never seen before. So we're going to stitch those 2 topics together, and I'm thrilled to have really a cross-section around our panelists here today as well. So kind of, kicking it off on kind of the purpose, values-based marketing piece. So that's what Public Good does, right? So we build brand love and loyalty based on the values and the social good that a brand that a brand supports. And so I've really seen over the last 6 months a massive shift, not in the values of brands, but how they talk about their values. And so just to kind of set the table. So with Edward Jones and Ulta Beauty and Turo, all 3 of these brands are deeply rooted in strong values, strong reputational brands, and really giving back to their community and the planet. So all of these brands are doing those 3 things. But what I want to talk about today isn't are you values-based, but it's more how do you talk about it? So a year ago, we heard a lot about DE&I strategy as an example. Today, that's really been muted. And so what I wanted to talk about, let's start with Kelly. In this moment, we are all rooted in values, but in this moment, are you leaning into purpose and values-based marketing, or are you kind of leaning away from that?
Well, over the last several years, probably since even before COVID, Ulta Beauty set out a path to change our brand purpose from more of a transactional functional. So I mentioned our real estate strategy. And the secret to our success was always putting the store in the right places so that we could bring all things beauty. So everything from mass to prestige all in one place. That hadn't existed before. Before, there was just a department store that you had to go to tap into that prestige market, or maybe the local drugstore to get your, what we call mass products. When you put those two things together, it really changed the game. And so most of our marketing was just built on put it on the shelf and people will come in because it's easy, great parking, easy and convenient. As I mentioned before, that has shifted, especially in the last 5 years or so, with the expansion of Amazon into our space, with the expansion of Sephora and their partnership with Kohl's. Accessibility and this ability to create convenience is no longer as much of a competitive advantage. So even more importantly, and we had set out on this journey about 6 years ago, you have to give consumers a reason to want to come to your location over another location. I spent 12 years in gas, talk about purpose-driven marketing, spent 12 years at BP, really trying to convince people in a low involvement category that it did make sense to take that harder left turn instead of the easy right turn into the gas station for a reason, because we could give you something that could make you feel something. And so I'm very proud to work at Ulta Beauty because we started leveling up our positioning of why you come to Ulta Beauty. We started to tap into what the definition of beauty was in a much deeper way than the superficial I put makeup on. And it was really about what we call the superpowers of beauty. And through just watching our customers and especially our associates interact with our guests, we realized that beauty does have superpowers, and we call them, expression, self-expression. I can express who I am and how I wish to look. I can feel very empowered once I find the right products, whether that's skincare or makeup or hair care. All of the products sort of create this level of confidence that you can show up feeling your best self. And then there was this COVID thing, and that created wellness. And we started to realize beauty is wellness, actually. People are taking care of themselves when they do their hair or they put their skincare routine on, and then when they finish it off with cosmetics. People were perceiving that as, I'm taking care of myself, I'm doing something really great for me. And then I think what's really unique for Ulta Beauty is that we're a destination with 10,000 square feet that can allow people to connect. And really the only destination in beauty where grandmother, granddaughter, and mother can all come in, and by the way, grandfather and grandson can come in and have just as great of an experience. You can't do that in many places. We sell CeraVe all the way to Lancôme, so it's a really great place to celebrate those superpowers, and that's what we've been talking about. And I know you led with DEI. What I would say about that—
Are you still using that word?
Of course, because it is who we are. So we were never about creating a report or reporting out on stats. In the beauty industry, it's incredibly personal. And so we think about who we staff in our stores and how we reflect the societies because it's an emotional experience and we're highly purpose-driven. So we do want to make sure that everybody that walks through our doors or goes on our website feels welcoming and inclusive. And people have tried to push us on this a lot in situations like this or even with press. And it's just like, it's who we are. So how do you abandon who we are? You can't. So that would be my answer. We talked last night about doubling down. I mean, I don't know if we're doubling down. We're doing what we always have done, which is just continuing to show up in that purpose-driven way and reflect the societies by which we serve and make sure that we're creating an inclusive and welcoming atmosphere.
Thank you so much, and love the way you unpacked the context of how you got there. Super appreciate it. And we've had some time to chat. Annie, so very different industry. So not beauty, financial, wellness. Talk about as you've seen the shift, are you sort of leaning in and doubling down on the values-based messaging, or you're leaning away from it?
Yeah.
And again, I just want to say one more time, the messaging. So we're all highly committed to the
messaging.
values, but like how much are we using it as marketers?
If you're asking, do we come out and say, use the word DEI, we don't as much, because
Yep.
it's become a distraction. It doesn't reflect the intention. So actually, in talking to Kelly last night, I was pretty shocked to find how much similarity there is between Edward Jones and Ulta. You talk about the superpowers of beauty. Our campaign is about the key to being rich is knowing what counts. At its core, that is about values and what matters to the individual investor. Rich means different things to different people, and for most people, there is some component of that is deeply rooted or entirely rooted in what they value as a person. So the answer to the question, are we leaning in or leaning out? We're leaning in more than ever, but the language that we use to describe what inclusivity means is really at the investor level. Of course, as a corporation, we're all about inclusivity and a place of belonging, and I'm a member of the LGBTQ plus community, and I work there at in an executive capacity. So I think it would be difficult to make a point that Edward Jones isn't an inclusive place of belonging. But yeah, no question, we adapt our language just like any good marketer does for the audience. So we're careful to make sure that we stay focused on the sentiment and not get distracted by somebody else's narrative.
Yes, super helpful to see kind of the differences in how the brands are navigating the waters. This is a polarized environment, so a lot of the marketers I talk to feel like I don't want to alienate one side or the other side or say the wrong word. And so there is a new language that we're all learning that is neutral and can really attract new customers and retain them in a neutral way. Over to Matt, and I loved how we chatted earlier about, you used to lead with sustainability, not as much anymore. So tell us, where is Turo's head as it relates to language?
Yeah, so much different situation. Company that actually started, it was originally called Communal Wheels. Very few people know that. And then it launched as Relay Rides and rebranded as Turo about 10 years ago. And, not ubiquitous like Ulta, like EJ, but a brand that has grown a lot. About half the people in the US are aware of Turo. That's up significantly since the start of the pandemic. And yeah, to your point, Melissa, when Shelby Clark started Turo, it was, kind of looking at an opportunity. He was actually in Boston. It was a winter night. He was biking to the store to pick up, I can't remember what grocery it was, let's just call it milk. And he basically was going past all of these cars that were parked, that were completely unused and were, probably utilized 5%, maybe less of the time. So it's like, why couldn't I use one of these, right? And pay somebody to use one of these. And so at the time, it was really about, community, which enabled, the ability to share cars more and it was both about efficiency, so basically being able to share cars, and also in doing so tap into that sustainability aspect of less cars on the road, more cars being shared. Over time, we actually leaned more into that because the amount of electric vehicles that we ultimately had in our marketplace was vastly superior to any other traditional rental car company, Enterprise, Hertz, Avis, et cetera. And 3 years ago, we actually got a carbon neutrality certification that was the only company in the industry that could do that, which was awesome. But I think that at the end of the day, that is not our purpose. That is not our unapologetic point of view. That is not why the company was started. And I think today, as we have a couple 100,000 what we call them hosts, so the car owners and the platform, we're incredibly proud of creating entrepreneurs, of economically empowering those people to look at an asset that's sitting on their driveway and saying, I can make money from this and I can build a business, whether it's a side hustle or increasingly people's actual full-time gigs and building out fleets and teams. And so for us, we're actually going through this exercise right now that I'm leading to disrupt ourselves because things are changing at an insane pace with AI and politics and generational change, right? By 2030, Gen Z is going to have $12 trillion in buying power. They're 28 now. Like they're not that young. And so we're thinking about all these things, and we're thinking about the next sort of 5 to 10 years of what we want to be when we grow up. And what I will say, the last thing about Turo here is, I don't think we're bold enough with our messaging. I think that what I like to tell people is we're sort of like chocolate chip ice cream, where we're not all the way vanilla. We have a little bit of something, but I don't think that we're all the way like Ben and Jerry's fish food or whatever, right? Where we're mass, but we're also very unique. And so, as I look at who has won in the peer-to-peer kind of marketplace spaces that are really out there, right? It's Uber and Lyft, it's Airbnb, it's DoorDash, right? They have an extremely overt and unapologetic and bold point of view. And, not to out other brands, but if I look at, a Vrbo or a Grubhub, companies like that, they're just not as overt. They are more transactional, to the point that was made earlier about kind of leaning into more of the emotive. And we want to emerge from this with a positioning that identifies a clear villain and helps the community writ large connect over, change and control. Because when you go to the car rental counter, they tell you what you get, right? As opposed to you deciding what you want and, not being able to kind of directly work with someone if anything goes wrong, or know that a company really has your back. We stand for all those things because we already do all those things. And so, the next phase is about how do we get Turo into the cultural conversation in a way that is much bolder and more visionary. And so excited to see where that goes, and take into consideration all the things that you talked about. And by the way, our host community is extremely diverse, of people of all kinds of different ages and genders and ethnicities and upbringings and backgrounds and identities. And so for us as well to not lean into that and celebrate that, because that just is innately who we are. They are the faces of our franchise who are providing the service. That's something that we have to consider in this exercise as well.
Awesome. Thanks so much for that, Matt. I'm looking forward to watching the brand evolve, and I'll be watching to see how much boldness comes out. Like, it's not easy to be bold. I mean, I used to be on stage talking about, brands being brave, but it's hard. We see what's happened with Elf, American Eagle, Target, Budweiser. There are these moments that brands can get caught in that are very scary. And so it's hard to not run your brand in a way of trying to navigate around that. But what I've seen over and over and over is that when brands have strong values and strong equity, when there's that kind of moment where something might go wrong, whether it's due to an influencer or whatever it is, there's a moment where it drops, but that stock price comes back, consumers come back. It's the long-term game, and that one moment doesn't change the long-term game. So I'm going to be watching, and excited to see boldness in the brand.
We're going to take some risks, for sure. We have to,
Yeah.
And I think that, but we talked about this last night, like we also have to be methodically, thoughtful about, who we align ourselves with, and make sure that we understand the whole situation, right? I mean, and also we have to execute really well, right? I mean, like people in the room at Target, at American Eagle, et cetera, they approve those things. They went to market with those things. And so we have a responsibility, and maybe it's a decent segue to AI, but like we have a responsibility to, ourselves make sure that we understand our customers extremely well, and can really recognize like what is going to emotionally connect with them and motivate them to change behaviors or continue behaviors or what have you, and not throw the baby out with the bathwater in terms of values and history and heritage and legacy that the brand has built.
Sounds great. Kelly, Annie, do you want to add anything to that?
As it relates to AI, or
Yeah, actually,
inclusive language?
Yeah, no, let's jump over to AI.
Okay.
Matt, you're talking about risk, right? So AI. it feels like every event is an AI event now, and I'm in the AI industry. So I'm thinking about like, hey, what can we talk about that's interesting and not being talked about? And I think, there's these kind of two sides of it. AI is everything and it's a future. But, I was talking to Shelley Palmer last week, and he's actually like, did you know that 80% of AI licenses aren't being used by employees and companies? That was shocking to me. I thought everyone was using AI, and it's like, oh, evidently not, right? So there's a lot of hype, there's a lot of zeitgeist, but like, what's really going on, right? How are people really thinking about it? And that's the conversation I wanted to have today.
They're all doing it themselves, but not at their companies.
Right. True. They're all on search.com. We're Gen AI. No. So what I want to talk about is, as you think about AI, and Annie, if you would kick off this conversation, it'd be great. Do you see AI as the competitive, the winning competitive differentiator, or not?
AI is not the competitive differentiator for Edward Jones. It never will be. Our actual competitive advantage is the opposite of AI's value proposition. Client intimacy is our competitive advantage. And similar to Ulta, being a place where multiple generations can relate, Edward Jones, and to your point, Matt, trillions of dollars in wealth will be changing hands over the next 15 years. So much of it inherited by Gen X and millennials. So of course we need to use AI in a prudent way, but client safety, client privacy is the most important thing for us right now. So we're really slow to adopt AI, and when we do use it, it's going to be for things like enabling our financial advisors. Client intimacy is the value proposition of Edward Jones. We are able to deliver personalized advice because we know our clients so well, and that comes from our business model enables it. We've got 20,000 plus financial advisors in over 15,000 branch offices. We have a physical footprint that's up there with, they don't like it when I compare us to McDonald's, but it's got a footprint that's that massive. It's the only thing we have in common with McDonald's. No offense to McDonald's. So there's some intimacy that comes from living and working alongside the people that you serve that you just can't replicate, at least today. And of course we're watching it, and of course we're going to employ it where it makes sense, but never at the expense of real human relationships.
That's so interesting. I mean, even if you think about, it's such an interesting point of view, particularly because, even therapists are being taken over sort of by, AI. And so, there's this question of like, what are the things that are going to remain human, and what are the things that are going to be taken over by AI? And it sounds like you are firmly in the camp that AI is not going to be running your financial advice moving forward. It's all about the humans and that trust.
That's right.
But I do think I think it's an enabler. Your point is, it's not maybe the competitive advantage, and I think, once again, Ulta Beauty and Edward Jones.
There's a partnership.
Complementary. There's something
brewing.
here.
And it happened here.
Something here. But we very much are about that too. So more than 80% of our sales come through the stores. And that's today in a world where you can get anything at your doorstep within 24 hours, yet our stores are really where the experience comes to life. And in beauty, while yes, the barriers to buying online in beauty have definitely lowered, there is still something that drives people inside because of that exploration, trial, and experience that only can happen in the physical. So very similar to our associates know who our guests are, especially those that come in time and time again, and we have stylists. In every single store, we have people that are literally cutting your hair or doing a facial or your brows. And so there are things that we can do to create an experience that's much more personalized, but it would all be in service of the human getting powered up through AI to be able to deliver an even more rich experience for our guests. That's how we're thinking about it. But I do want to say Ulta Beauty's loyalty program, which is really where everything starts, is so amazing. So we have over 45 million members in our program, and 95% of every sales dollar flows through the program. That means we know everything. We know everything that's happening in our stores, online, And then this is 7 years ago, started just putting all the data in a repository and ensuring we had a really smart data foundation. We were thinking about using it mainly for CRM, and look at us now. So we're sitting on this mountain of first-party data and growing it with other sources of data to really create this rich customer profile. And this is going to help us, and it is helping us. So this is where we are applying AI with the marketing tech stack. We use Adobe to power automated experiences because that's what the customer are asking us for. It's not because we think we need to do it for AI's sake. This is because in beauty, when you have 600 brands in your stores and online, people want help. People want help narrowing their choices, helping them find what they're looking for, helping them even discover things they didn't even know they were looking for. So they've been asking for this, and that's why in our world, we want to be able to power up our data and drive those experiences across both physical and digital. So we do see that as our, and I said this in the beginning, as one of the core ways in which we're going to continue to differentiate, since it is no longer the real estate game.
You know, I just wanted to add my own personal experience. So I have a daughter that's 15. We're talking about last night. So I've logged a lot of time at Ulta Beauty. But what I wanted to say is, you know, it's almost like the Disney, right? Like, it's hard to spend quality time with your 15-year-old. Anyone who has a 15-year-old daughter knows what I'm talking about. But our trips to Ulta Beauty, they're fun. You know, we're talking about what do you need when you get there. She knows way more about all the products than I do. You know, we walk around together. There's space. It's not crowded. But anyway, all this to say, like, in terms of my memories of my daughter in this phase of teenage land, you know, a lot of them are in Ulta Beauty, and that's amazing.
Thank you.
Yeah. Matt, I'm
have
so
thoughts.
excited to hear your thoughts on AI because I know a few of them.
Yeah, so a few things. So one, for Turo specifically, I think it'll be a balance. I think on one hand, we look at the human element of our business. It's peer-to-peer. It's not, you know, company to customer. So it's host to guest. And I think that there's a lot of beauty that can come out of the serendipity of, you know, like you stay at an Airbnb and somebody leaves you something when you arrive and there's a note and there's a warmth that comes from that, right? And so if we can think about ourselves as much of a hospitality company as sort of a tech company or a travel company, then I think that that's a huge competitive advantage, right? People choose DoubleTree hotels over Holiday Inns because you get warm chocolate chip cookies when you check in. Like, that's real. So there's that. But then on the other hand, I think that, you know, I often sort of like joke that, you know, I'm like working with my coworker, ChatGPT or Gemini or whatever, because I do think that AI, particularly being a digitally native company, has so much application from an engineering standpoint, from a customer service and experience standpoint with chatbots, and then obviously from a marketing standpoint, from a, you know, kind of market research, product development. I mean, there's all kinds of things that I think that make a lot of sense for us to be able to build our business faster and better than the highly archaic and ancient sort of competitors of ours that just, quite frankly, aren't going to be able to move as quickly as us. So for us to not contemplate it in a very meaningful way now is dumb. But I will say something provocative in the room with a bunch of marketers is I think that a lot of marketers are in like, don't just stand there, do something mode with AI. And I kind of feel like this is like the Facebook wall moment. Like we're actually really early and a lot of stuff is being sorted out in terms of like who you should use, what you should use. There's so many companies, like if you want to make an AI generated image, there's like 70 billion companies and some are free and some are need your email and whatever. And so somebody said something to me recently that I thought was really thoughtful, which was, don't just do something, stand there.
That's funny.
Right? So it's sort of like slow down to speed up. So to the extent that we can be really thoughtful in understanding these things, I think will go a long way. And so a few things. One is, we talked about Gen Z. I feel like marketers are spending too much time trying to learn about AI and not enough time learning about Gen Z, who it will be
That's a great
serving.
point.
Secondly, I don't think people have a good enough understanding of what actually goes into the AI. So if you look at, what the Geminis, GPTs, Perplexities, Claudes of the world are taking in and spitting out through search, 40% of that is Reddit. I think it's like 25% of it is Wikipedia. There's YouTube, there's Google. So like what is actually going into it, and are you paying attention to those spaces? And then I think the last thing that kind of comes back to the original topic we talked about is who are writing the prompts? Like if we just have like a bunch of Matt Kerbels, like a bunch of like white millennials, male white millennials, and you're trying to reach the mosaic of America right now, and as it is continuing to do so, then are those prompts right? Do we have the requisite lived experience to be able to conversate with a chatbot or what have you, and actually like get the right answers to the questions that we're trying to pose and the challenges? So I think having diversity in the room is actually really important. It can be a gross competitive advantage because not only of having diverse perspectives in the room, but also being able to actually know what to feed in terms of stories and things that you want the AI to learn about your brand. So I think that there's so much to do right now, but it doesn't have to be like, I need to use AI to create 70 versions of a performance marketing ad so that I can learn the exact nuanced copy that will make my target customer convert. Like, cool, fine, you can do that, but that's not going to be what step change for your business.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. Kelly, Annie, would you like to add anything around Matt's comments?
No, I mean, I agree. Like, we're going to use it where it makes sense. It doesn't supplant our value proposition or our differentiator. It enables, and I do agree that people are scrambling to do something because it seems like you should be doing activities, and we're not taking that approach. We're being really careful.
In addition, I guess I would add that it's all about powering the human right now, AI to power the human, so you have some control before it kind of gets out into the wild. I would recommend stay in that state until you have a lot of confidence. In the beauty industry, we got to be really careful about things like generative AI and utilizing AI to replace creative, especially when it comes to the human. And we stand for we want to break the traditional mode of what it means to be beautiful. And so we've had a lot of conversations around the table around what will generative AI do to the definition of beauty, and how do we want to participate in that? And so like I keep saying, I want to build the most imperfectly perfect model out there that can understand when to show a human face potentially that has wrinkles, or that has acne, or that has things, and boy, that does not exist. And I have placed that challenge onto some of the smartest people in the room, and they just sort of look at you like, wow, okay, let's build that interesting model. That could be really, really cool. But we are like so far from that. We can do things like SKU compilations, which, take this and this and remix it and put it in different forms, different sizes, things like that, just to take efficiency out. That's been great, and I think that's a really great use case for AI for right now.
I do have one more thing to add. Also, I hope that perfectly imperfect situation comes to life.
Love that.
I mentioned my spending all this time on Zoom that we do and just staring at yourself all day. Like, my
It's so
self-confidence has never been lower.
Think about GLP-1s though too, and like what that's doing to the definition of beauty and beauty.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. And one last comment as it relates to AI and influencers, and it's been on the rise for many years. It's actually contributing to lower confidence in investors. So there's an inverse relationship between social media and the platforms that everyone has that can go on there and say anything, and the factual error rate of AI is actually pushing people more toward a human advisor in ways that may not last forever, but at least for now, that phenomenon, the skepticism is on the rise and confidence is decreasing, and so that's just another way that we appreciate and recognize that the prioritization of the human relationships is important.
Awesome. So I'm going to give everyone a second to think about what questions they have, and I can't help mentioning, thank you for bringing up the fact that a lot of the LLMs are, leaning on like Reddit and Wikipedia, which are okay sources, but like 60% of the answers.
It's early. It's still early.
Yeah, it's still early. So I can't help mentioning, at Search.com, we're a Gen AI chat platform. We're really passionate about moving beyond that and ingesting premium publisher content and providing monetization attribution back to those publishers. So let's provide real content within Gen AI. So anyway, couldn't help mentioning that while I'm leaving Search.com. So opening up to the room, we've got so many great points of view here, and really appreciate the honest and candid feedback. So there's a question over here. Thanks, Nick.
I have the mic right.
Oh, no one wants me with a microphone. So my question is, we are developing Gen AI and using it as faster than we can create laws and regulate, and as brands, we're the ones that are creating a lot of culture and content out there. So what do you think our responsibility as brand marketers is to not sort of feed into this AI slop narrative where people are becoming distrustful and it's causing all these different things? Like, do we have a responsibility? And then how do we kind of set that bar that everybody else follows, since we're kind of leading the charge with it?
I mean, absolutely, yes, we have a responsibility. I don't necessarily think it's about regulation or technology, but it is to truth and accuracy. And as a brand, if you lose sight of truth and accuracy, I think you've lost your way in a pretty significant, problematic way.
Yeah, I mean, for sure, like I was saying, I think we absolutely have responsibility, and I think that it comes with what we're kind of, feeding the beast about our brand, so to speak. Also, how you're managing those spaces is really important. Reddit is becoming increasingly important, and honestly, it's great because people are coming and having unsolicited conversations, not just reviews, but actual conversations about your brand, where you can learn a lot, and you can then transparently talk about how you are addressing the things that people are saying, or you can have ask me anythings, or you can provide really cool product information and updates and things like that. So I think part of it is transparency, for sure. That's the human element. The other thing I think is something that will never ever go out of style, ever. 6 of the best words in our languages is I think 6. I don't know. Let me tell you a story, right? I
thought you were going to say red pumps.
Yeah, that too. Well, I mean,
Those will probably go out of style.
win.
Damn it.
But I think our ability to storytell and to connect with people emotionally is something that AI is still very not good at. And I think that even once it gets incredibly good and it's hard to discern the difference, I still think it's on us to influence that, and either to just not use AI at all, or to use it complementarily to be able to tell those stories in ways that are extremely authentic. And honestly, I think that as AI becomes more and more pervasive in our society, I think that people, similarly today as Gen Z is craving more analog than ever, the opposite, the human element, will only become more important. And I think that that'll be actually a competitive advantage for brands. So I think it really is all about balance and the stewardship of the opportunity we have.
I would add. I mean, if I were to add, I think these are great. You have to stay true to, and I think Annie kind of said this, your brand's purpose, which is why I think our responsibility is to be very, very careful with the human face and how we leverage AI to do that, because I think there is, lots of 8-year-old, 9-year-old boys and girls getting into beauty at earlier and earlier ages in their lives. When I was a kid, it was like 13. That was when I first started using makeup, but it's 8 and 9-year-olds now, and especially in skincare. So we have a great responsibility, I think, as marketers and storytellers, when you know that's what's happening in the world that you operate in. How do you apply messaging and creative and what's your force. So our force is we want to be a force for good for all. And so that's why we have to think very carefully about the application of things like generative AI, especially when it comes to creating some sort of beauty standard out there.
Awesome. Any other questions?
We can do one more.
Yeah, I have no idea how we're doing for timing. I don't watch.
Sorry, our table's dominating. So we had this conversation 10 years ago with like first-party and third-party data. So when it comes to AI, as a brand, are you welcoming regulation and governance that kind of forces the hand and levels the playing field and raises the bottom bar? Or do you think that's going to get in the way of innovation from you, from your partners, your agencies? Where do you sit on that kind of spectrum today?
I think there's a point of diminishing returns on most things, so regulation is no exception. I think that could be taken too far. But I think we need some advocacy for the citizenry. So I do think we need something there to hold us accountable to a standard that we all share for the well-being of the country.
Yeah, I think the stakes are even higher. I mean, I just think deep fakes and dupes and, the ability that AI has requires oversight, for sure. It requires stewardship and responsibility from us, but I think it also requires regulation. And, there's obviously been already a lot of heat from artists, whether it's obviously the strikes that happened with regards to screenwriting or music. So yeah, I think I totally agree with Annie. I don't have much more to say other than there needs to be advocacy for the people and making sure that people are protected from the Terminator 2 future that we all are nervous about. But I think all kidding aside, I think there needs to be a balance, right? How can we unleash this in a way that progresses society while also protecting people from the perils? And I don't know the answer. That's way above my pay grade, but yeah.
It's a great answer. I would have nothing more to add other than agree. And we talk a lot about, we do a lot of work with influencers, spend a lot of money with influencers to carry out our message authentically. And you think about their businesses, and these are independent entrepreneurs that have created an entire business around themselves and what they have to say in the world. They are concerned about what their future looks like. So on that basis, yeah, I agree. There probably does need to be some level of regulatory standards, or how do we ensure that people's rights are protected when it's so easy to completely just make a dupe. So yeah, for those reasons, I mean, I really don't have a lot more to say on that other than I think as marketers, when you have the power to utilize this really important tool, you're utilizing it according to your brand's purpose and the values by which you live on and whatever force you stand on. And most of us in this room, hopefully, are a force for good.
One last thing I'll add is it puts the onus on us to lean more into the things that we as humans can do better, which is, vulnerability, transparency, creativity. Everybody was talking about the fake AI woman at the US Open, right? Just popping up in different places. I think that AI is only going to get better and better at this. And so it takes human ingenuity and creativity to kind of outdo that and to come up with really, creative stuff, right? I know that, for example, like Liquid Death used AI to generate a spot, and it just wasn't as good. It was unhinged and great, but it just wasn't as good as what they typically put out. That's not for everyone, but very in line with their brand. And I think that it's on us to really lean into creativity and storytelling in a way that hopefully AI will never be able to.
Awesome. Well, everyone, please help me in thanking this group. The preparation, getting on a plane, for honest, candid conversation. Super appreciate it.
Thank
you guys
you,
are
Melissa.
awesome. Yeah, and I think we're all like bonded now. Have to hang out in future. All right. Thank you, everyone.
All right, thank